Former Oilers quarterback Warren Moon joining me here on the podcast. Warren, thanks for coming in.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Dan, and it's great to be here. I love coming back to Houston.
Sure.
Got a lot of roots here. This is where it all started for me in the NFL, and I've got a lot of family that still lives here, so it's a great time to always come back.
So before we start talking about your football life and your journey through this game that we both love, right? You to a different extent.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure. I do want to touch on the this new initiative that you have. The Brothers in Arms initiative you have with Andre Ware and Deshaun Watson. When I first saw it, I thought, oh, man, that's perfect. Yeah. Is that how you guys saw it? That, hey, this is kind of a perfect combination of blend with what we can do. Right. So kind of walk me through what started it, what it does, and why it's so important to you.
Well, Patty Smith presented the idea from the Houston Sports Authority to Andre Ware, and we all knew each other, there's no question about it, for years. I've known Deshaun since he came out of college. And, of course, Vince and Andre since they were really young guys. But we never...
Oh, yeah, that's right. Vince Young, too.
Shoot. Yeah, we never really thought about all the things we did have in common. And the one thing that really brought it all together was the fact that we all came from single-mom homes. We were all raised by single moms. So that was something that kind of brought everything together. We all have had our successes in some type of relationship here in Houston, whether it was Andre playing at U of H or Vince being from right here at Madison High School and going on to UT. Deshaun, of course, being the quarterback here now, and then me being here for 10 years. So we all are involved in the community in some sort of way, and I was always involved in this community when I was living here. So this is a way for me to get back involved in the community and do something with a bunch of guys who we all have kind of that same relationship of being quarterbacks, being African-American quarterbacks, being raised by single moms, being educated, and wanting to give back to young kids who have the same type of dreams and aspirations that we had as young people, but we needed an opportunity, and we want to give some of those opportunities to some young students here in Houston.
What are those conversations like between you guys when you're able to get together? Because, football, sports are all clubs, right? And then those clubs are broken up into individual little segments. Like, this is such a unique club that you guys have. What are those conversations like? What are the stories that you guys share back and forth?
Well, they're mainly about just how we're all doing, because everybody's always concerned about each other's health, what each other's doing with their lives right now, because we're all doing different things, and how our families are doing. So those are the things we're more concerned about. And then we get into the specifics of how we want to make this scholarship a success, different ways to fundraise for it, what we're going to do the actual night of the event at the Houston Sports Awards, how we're going to present them, all those types of things. So there's a lot that goes into it, but it's great being able to communicate with these guys, and then we also do a little trash talking.
Oh, I bet. I bet. Reflecting on careers and all sorts of stuff. So let's do that with you a little bit. When you kind of sit back, and I don't know how long or how much of this you do, when you sit back and kind of appreciate the journey that you've been on, what kind of pops in your mind?
A long career, a career that took a lot of different twists and turns and ups and downs because of the way I had to do it, especially during the time that I had to do it. But it was something that I feel very proud of, that I was able to make it through all that and be able to kind of open the doors for another set of African-American quarterback generation to get opportunities because of some of the things I was able to do on the field, some of the things Doug Williams did when he played, as winning a Super Bowl, and Randall Cunningham, we all played during the same time. So the fact that we had a lot of success at a high level during that time, it really opened up the doors for that next generation of guys. And now you see what's going on in the league now. Guys are just flourishing. The top 4 or 5 quarterbacks in this league right now are all African Americans. We've got 4 of them in the playoffs. A chance to get another 1 or 2 in the Super Bowl. So the opportunities are there, and we feel a great part of that we all played a little bit of a part in that happening, because that's what I'm most proud of, that I left the game. I left the game with a legacy of being able to help other guys, and that's kind of what I'm all about anyway in my makeup.
What was that like? Can you kind of walk through or kind of tell people what was that like coming through at an earlier age? You in high school, and then you kind of figure out, okay, I'm going to play at the next level, go to Washington, and do you know the gradual steps that you took? What was that like in your mind, kind of going through all that, both the successes and failures that accompany it?
Yeah, when you're living it, you're just trying to survive it and get through it. So you don't really think about it a whole lot. You're just trying to figure out what's the next move. What do I have to do next to get get the chance? How hard do I have to work to get to this next obstacle? So there's a lot of obstacles you have to go over throughout that journey. And are you willing to keep going over those, or at some point are you going to get frustrated and just quit and give up? And that's something that just wasn't in me. So I was going to continue to keep doing what I needed to do to make some things happen for me. And of course I got some doors shut in my face along the way, but I persevered enough to keep going because I had a goal set in mind, and I always had the confidence that I could play the game and play it at a high level. And it was just a matter of finding the right opportunity, the right person that believed in me. And fortunately, I found enough people that believed in me along the way at every level that I got those chances, and I made the most of those opportunities when I got them. So that's what I try and tell young people is you're going to get discouraged sometimes, but you just have to you got to keep plugging away, and at some point somebody's going to give you that chance, and you've got to make sure you're ready when that chance comes. You can't be down in the dumps. You can't be feeling sorry for yourself. You got to keep plugging away and improving yourself for when that knock on the door happens.
And it was a roller coaster of emotions there for you after college, because you just come off winning the Rose Bowl, MVP of the Rose Bowl, beating Michigan, huge upset. Let's talk about that, because I'm a Northwestern guy, and the Rose Bowl is always so special. I know we've only been there 2 times, but what was that like? What was that moment like to beat Michigan on that stage? What did it do for you, the confidence that it gave you? Because you'd been playing a couple years at Washington, but then it kind of put you on the national stage a little bit more.
I still say that's one of the most exciting sports moments in my career of all the different things that I've done. I've won championships. I've been to playoff games. I've done all of that. But,
isn't that crazy?
But as a young kid, it started because I used to watch that game living in Los Angeles, always wishing I could go to that game, but we could never afford to go to the Rose Bowl. So I always watched it on television. And I watched all the different schools that came through, and USC used to basically dominate it, UCLA a little bit of Stanford, and then you always had Oregon. I mean, they make that Ohio State or Michigan coming in from the Big Ten. One of those two schools always represented. So that's what I remember most about it. Watching those games, it was always that time of day where in California, a beautiful sunny day.
It's always a great weather day.
No matter what the weather is leading up to that game, it was always a beautiful sunny day. It starts out that way, and then as the game ends, the lights come on and the sun goes down behind the stadium. It's just a beautiful setting for football. That's why they called it the granddaddy of them all. It comes on at 2 o'clock in the afternoon,
That's it.
5 o'clock in the east, just a perfect time. So I was always mesmerized by that game, and I always dreamed of playing in it. Now to get a chance to actually play in it as a senior in college, highlight of my career just because of what it meant to me watching it all those years as a young kid growing up.
As a young kid growing up, what were those days like? How did they shape you to become the person that you eventually became?
Well, growing up, I grew up without a dad. My mom basically raised us. It was myself and 6 sisters, and I was kind of the man of the house at a very young age. Yeah, so I took on a lot of responsibility at a very early age, and I really took that title on as man of the house like full bore. I probably didn't enjoy myself as much as a young kid as I should have, because I kept thinking I had all this responsibility to take care of my sisters, making sure everybody's safe, making sure I'm have the house locked up at night, all these different things that a 7, 8, 9-year-old shouldn't be having to worry about. But that's the way it was. And then I watched the way my mother kind of managed and orchestrated our house. We lived in a small 2-bedroom house with all those kids, but it was immaculate because she had everything in a place. There was always a place for everything. And we always had clean clothes. We always had hot meals. She re-educated herself, went back to school and became a private duty nurse. Worked at night, came back home in the morning, had us ready for school. So it was just amazing how she was able to manage all that. And I noticed all that, and I watched it and watched how
you can't help but notice it, right?
And it motivated me as far as my makeup of who I am, and it also motivated me to get to a point where I could be successful, maybe one day take care of her so she didn't have to do all these things for me. So she got me involved in sports at a very young age, basically to be around other boys because I had all these women in the house, and then to have some mentors in my life, coaches. So a lot of my coaches became like father figures to me. So that was the main reason why she did it, and I loved playing sports, so it fit right in with what I wanted to do. And I kind of just gravitated towards the quarterback position and the leadership of that position, basically because of my makeup of growing up.
I was going to ask you.
I
mean, it was
a little bit of a mature little kid.
Yeah,
So,
you're built. That was built in you from a young age. That leadership.
So
role.
I started playing at 11 years old, and all the way until I retired.
So you win the Rose Bowl MVP. So that's the ultimate high for you, right? In your career, and then you don't get drafted.
Right.
What were you thinking at that point when you then decided to go to the CFL?
Well, there was a lot that led up to that. First of all, I had to make a decision whether I wanted to go to the CFL or the NFL draft 6 weeks prior to the draft, because their draft was earlier, because their season starts earlier. So I had to sit down with my agent, and we kind of went through the pros and cons of staying or leaving. And the positive side of it was go to Canada, because they were going to let me play quarterback.
Gotcha.
Everything we were getting from the NFL, they were probably going to change my position, maybe not even get drafted. I wanted to play quarterback. I felt like I could play quarterback, and I didn't care if you had to send me to Siberia. I was going to play quarterback if they were going to give me the chance to play it. So that's what I ended up doing, and I went up to Canada, had a really good career up there. But, of course, I'm up there really not wanting to be there as my first choice, because as a young kid growing up, I dreamed of playing in the NFL. Like any other kid who wants to play football, they want to be in their country and they want to be in the NFL.
Yeah.
So I was bitter at times, but we were so successful up there that sometimes winning cures everything. But
you kind of forget all the rest of the stuff. Yeah.
But I'm away from home. I'm in another country. I don't know a lot of people except for the guys on my team. So there was a lot of lonely nights because I was by myself. You know, I wasn't married at the time. And I lived by myself, and it got cold up there, believe it or not.
I bet.
Believe it or not. So,
I bet.
You're sitting and you're watching NFL games on TV, and you're wishing or wondering why I'm not out there playing with these guys that I feel like I'm just as good as they are. But I am in a great situation where I'm making good money, I'm winning football games, but I'm not really where I want to be.
Did you think that it was just a matter of time that you'd be able to jump to the NFL? Like, what was the mindset?
I didn't know.
You could have gone either way, right? You could have kept pushing, or you could have let that stuff kind of get to you.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that's kind of a message that you still preach to this point, right?
Well, I had so much pride in my ability that I wanted to just keep getting better and keep improving. Yeah. And like I told you earlier, the thing is, you just keep getting better and trying to improve yourself. So one day, if that call does come, you're ready for it. So that's what I did. I wanted to become the best player that I could be in Canada, and I ended up doing that. And then the NFL team started calling me probably 2 years before my contract was over. That was one of the things that kept me up there so long. I signed another contract.
Gotcha.
And I was under contract, so I couldn't leave any earlier than I wanted to.
What was the feeling when the NFL team started calling?
It was a great feeling, but it was like, what took you so long?
Yeah, right. Finally, gosh. What have you been watching?
But, because I wasn't drafted, it put me in a better position because I was a free agent now. So as a free agent, there was no free agency in football at that time. I could go wherever I really wanted to as far as if that team was interested in me. So fortunately, I had 6 teams that really made a serious bid for me, and I put those teams in a bidding process and ended up being the highest paid player in football when I came out of Canada. So as bad as it was for me having to go up there in the first place, it ended up working out pretty good for me, and I ended up going to a place where I wanted to go, which was here in Houston. Initial
thoughts of Houston when you got here?
Everything that you would imagine. It was Texas. It was Texas. You know, I opened my closet when I went to my hotel room. There's a pair of boots sitting there for me.
No kidding.
There's a belt with a big buckle on it. There's a jacket. There's a cowboy hat in there. So all of it was sitting there waiting for me to put on as my new outfit. So it was Texas. There's no question about it.
You're playing here in Houston, and you see the team develop around you.
Yeah.
And you get to a point where, you guys are pretty good out there. What was that like for you to see the development happen around you, the leader of this team, the guy they brought in to kind of set this all in motion, to finally see all that hard work kind of pay off with victories on the field?
Yeah, there was some very tough days in the beginning, because those first 2 or 3 years, as we were building the football team through the draft, we had some losing seasons, and of course the quarterback takes a lot of that blame because you're the guy. That's what you sign up for.
Yeah.
You're either going to get a lot of the praise that you don't deserve, but you're going to get a lot of the criticism that you don't always deserve as well. So I took a lot of that criticism, and I heard a lot of boos and a lot of nasty things said about me from the stands.
Sure.
And my family now, I had a family at this time, so they're exposed to a lot of that, and that's what I was more worried about than anything else. Not so much myself, because I had dealt with that all the way through college, and I knew kind of what to expect. That we were coming down here, we were going to rebuild something, and eventually it was going to turn out, but it was going to be some tough days, and there was some.
So 1992 rolls around, great team. We know what happened in the playoffs. Not going to talk about the playoffs, but I do want to talk about that 92 season, because it was for me, and kind of a little anecdote. I moved from Chicago to Houston in 1992, and the first NFL game I ever went to was a Bengals-Oilers game.
Really?
Yeah, back in 92 in the Dome.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget when I first heard the song. Houston Oilers
song?
#1.
And the Miami Dolphins, too.
Yeah, I got to ask you.
It happens to be the same song.
Yeah, right. I got to ask you, when you heard the song, what did you think?
You know, the first time I heard it was in a Monday night game when I was in Canada, and Earl Campbell was a rookie with the Oilers.
Okay.
And that was the night that I kind of fell in love with Houston fans because of the blue pom-poms.
Yep.
And watching Earl run for, I don't know, I think he ran for 190 yards or something on Monday Night Football, and they played that song every time they scored points. So I had heard it before I got here, but to actually hear it, it was pretty cool.
Is it cheesy? Right, it's cheesy.
At first it's cool, then it becomes a little cheesy. We scored a lot of
I
touchdowns.
know, right? After a while, it's like, okay, now.
Okay, enough Houston Oilers.
But I do want to ask you about the 93 season. It was crazy. It's been well documented.
God.
What was that team like? What was it being on that team? What was the camaraderie like and everything that went about it? Like I said, it's been well documented with you guys. The 1-4 to 12-4, all that. But
that was a very interesting year, has been documented. But we were a really close team, and I think that's the only reason why we were able to get through everything that we dealt with that season is because we had good leadership on that team, we had great talent on that team, and we had great resolve on that team. But it seemed like by the end of the year, we were just mentally exhausted, just having to deal with all the things that we dealt with. You know, I got benched early in the season because we got off to a slow start. Then I come back and we turn things around.
What was that like, by the way, when that move was made? You just
I didn't agree with it
after so many years in the league.
But,
yeah,
Coach Pardee told me that he needed a spark. He needed something to change, and usually that's the place you're going to change things. So even though I understood it, I didn't agree with it. But my mindset again was, don't hang your head. Be ready. Just keep making yourself ready because you don't know when that call is going to come. And it ended up coming in the first half of that first game against New England. Cody got hurt, I think, early in the ball game, and I ended up going right back in, and things kind of turned around from there. But during that same game, that was the game that David Williams had stayed home with his wife who had just had a baby, and that became a big story of Babygate. And we had a player, Jeff Alm, who committed suicide during that season. Of course, I got benched. We had the Buddy Ryan, Kevin Gilbride.
It's all over the place.
Sideline. All of this stuff became national stories. It wasn't just something that happened right here in Houston. So it was something we had to deal with as a team all the time, and listening and answering questions about things that had really not much to do with football.
What was the difference? Because in this world that we live in now with so much media saturation, I mean, everything is everywhere all the time. Can you imagine that 93 season with this media environment? I mean, what was it like back then? It was a lot for you guys to deal with.
So there's no way, if it would have been in this social media environment that we live in now, it's no telling how big these things would have become.
And what would have happened to that team, right, during the season, right?
Yeah, it might have imploded. You never know. But again, we were a very talented team. We won 11 games in a row.
Yeah.
And nobody had done that for a long time, and it took a long time before somebody else did it again. So, again, that was one of those teams that you really wish would have gone further because it was a good enough team to win it all, I thought.
We've seen a lot of great wide receiver cores. You had a pretty good one that year. Haywood Jeffries, Ernest Givens, Curtis Duncan. I can keep going on and on.
All three of those guys made the Pro Bowl that year.
Yeah.
From one team. That's how good we were when we spread the ball around.
How fun was it to play with those guys?
It was great because they were all hard workers. They all wanted to be good. and they all wanted the football. And you want guys who want the football.
Yeah.
There's some guys that shy away from the ball, especially in the biggest moments. All those guys wanted the ball, and I tried to spread it around as much as I possibly could to keep all of them happy, so they always stayed involved. They always ran their routes hard, even if they weren't going to get the ball. You got to have guys clearing areas out for another guy to come open. So all that works in conjunction with each other, and the way you keep everybody happy is you spread it around.
How would you guys as an offense stack up in today's game?
With the way the rules are right now, we'd kind of be unstoppable.
I bet.
Because you can't be as physical with the receivers anymore. You can't make the big hits on receivers anymore. You can't intimidate guys like that. They protect the quarterback so well.
You were kind of wish that.
And we had a very wide open offense, so
yeah,
it would have fit right in with today's football.
Did you wish you had another crack at it with that group?
I did. When I got traded, I was
when all the pieces
moved.
moved.
Why, and all that, and a lot of it had to do with business, salary cap, and that type of thing. But I still knew that I had more good football left in me, and I ended up playing 7 more years. But I also thought the rest of that team could have stayed together at least one more try, But that's not the way it went.
You think you could have gone to a Super Bowl with that team if you could stay together a little bit?
It was talented enough. There's no question about it. And I think the fact that we got beat, at home in the divisional round would have been something that really would have motivated us the next year to get it done and finish it.
What was the feeling like when all the pieces were moving, when you got traded? On the conversations with the guys, what was
it was sad because not only were you splitting up a really good football team, a bunch of guys were really close together, but also the team was going to be moving within a year or two, I think it was.
Yep.
So now you've got the team pretty much a lame duck football team because everybody knows they're moving to Tennessee. Nobody's attending the games, and I felt bad for the guys because I'm in Minnesota, but I'm definitely in touch with what's going on back here at home. And I felt bad for those guys who run out of that tunnel. There's 10, 15,000 people in the Astrodome. That's sad especially for a city like Houston, who's such a great football city.
Right.
But they also knew the writing was on the wall that they were out of here. So why support somebody that doesn't want to be here?
When was it not awkward for you to hear the Houston Texans?
Yeah.
Because you were part of the Oilers. And so when was it, I guess it was the whole phase. You go to Tennessee, then the Tennessee Oilers and the Titans. But when was it not weird for you to hear Houston Texans?
Yeah. The thing I was happiest about is that they got a team back here in Houston because this fan base deserved a football team. And I think they were promised by the mayor at that time that they would have a team within 5 years. Well, it took 10 years. Mm-hmm. And if you can imagine a city as big as Houston, a city that loves football as much as Houston does, waiting 10 more years before they get a professional football team, it was like a big black eye to the city. So I was just happy that they got a team. The city had a chance to be involved in the naming of that team, and it got off to a good start.
I find it so bizarre when we go to Tennessee. You look up in the stands, all the names of the Oilers. I'm like, this.
You find it bizarre.
I'm sure you do. I mean, what is that?
I got my number retired there in Nashville.
Yeah.
I had to speak to the fans at halftime. Half those people had never, or maybe more, had never seen me play, and I'd never played in that stadium before, and now my number's up there. It's just a weird, it's almost like you're living in a black hole or something like that.
What do you guys talk about with the guys that were part of that group? And that's, you talk to old Oilers players, and they always feel that history should have stayed. Is that how you feel?
Yeah.
That should be. And I know politics get in the way
Exactly.
and all sorts of things happen, but is that how your impression of it?
I wish it could have, but I know the owner wanted to leave and have a clean slate and start over fresh in Nashville. But I wish all of our history would have stayed here because I played on other different teams, so I still have a place to go. Say on when you have your reunion.
Yeah, alumni
there's
appreciation
There's 3 other places
weekend.
I can go and say I'm an alumni. There's a lot of guys that only played for the Houston Oilers. They don't have an alumni weekend because there is no Houston Oilers anymore.
Yeah.
But what Miss Adams has done now is she's reached out to all the former Oilers, and we had a homecoming last year.
Okay.
And we invited back all the former Oilers. A lot of them showed up. We had a great time reminiscing and all that. And now they're making this an annual thing where the Oilers now feel a part of who they used to be. So
is that? I mean, are you starting to sense that it's kind of turning in the right direction?
Yeah, it is. It is because, again, those guys, not only myself, but those guys need to feel like they have a place that they could call home, because they gave, some of those guys played like a Ray Childress. He played his whole career, I think, for the Oilers, and now he doesn't have an alumni weekend. I know he's associated with the Texans in some way, but it's still not the same as the organization that you played for. So it's good that those guys have a place to go and that they can have an alumni weekend and kind of reminisce and talk about all the good times and some of the bad times and just feel like you're not forgotten.
Being an avid football watcher, you were broadcasting for a long time up in Seattle. Yeah. You still pay attention to the game. What have you thought about the progression of the Texans to this point? They've had their highs, they've had their lows, but as an organization, where do you think they are right now?
I think they're doing a good job. They've had some transition in the organization with Rick Smith not being there as general manager anymore, and then you had Mr. McNair passing away. But they've still stayed on course, and here they are, 2 rounds into the playoffs, and that's been their bugaboo, getting past that first round of the playoffs. And they had an amazing game last week to come from behind against Buffalo and win that game, and now they've got to go up to Kansas City and play. But that's progress, especially based off of what they've done in the past. So they've got an exciting, dynamic young quarterback to build around. And I think as they build more pieces around him and maybe a couple of more offensive linemen and another dynamic receiver, sky's the limit for this football team.
What do you think of Deshaun Watson, not just as a player, but as a person? There was one day, and I know you saw, he wore your jersey. Yeah. He's always spoken very highly of you. What does that mean to you, and what do you think about him in that leadership role? Do you see the guy that this organization can really count on for many, many years to come?
Yeah, I really do. And just the way he came on the scene, in his first year, he was putting up astronomical numbers until he got hurt. We saw what he did in college, winning a national championship at Clemson, going to 2 national championship games, playing his best football in the biggest moments. And then you saw him last week play his best football in the biggest moment to win that football game and come from behind. So, yeah, I love him as a football player, but he's even a better person. He's very soft-spoken. He's very close to his mom, has a great family relationship, does a lot of things in the community. So he's a guy that this city can be proud of as their quarterback for a long time.
What does he ask you, if you don't mind me saying? Obviously, you don't need to share all of it, but what are the type of questions that come your way from a guy like that who's still continuing to develop his game?
Yeah, mainly just about, the past and how you handle certain situations, things like that. And all those young guys are just sponges. They just want to hear stories about what you did when you played, who you played against. What was it like to play against Lawrence Taylor? What was it like to play against Reggie White? Guys like that. And you just try and share as much of the stories that you have, and then if there's any advice you can give, whatever it is they're asking, you try and give it.
What was it like to play against those guys?
Scary.
I bet.
It was scary, but it was a high respect because, of course, you're not scared of anybody, but you also always had to be aware of where those guys were on the field and how you were going to block them. Were you going to put a back on them? Were you going to put a tight end over there? Were you going to chip them? Because those guys made other players around them better because of all the attention you gave to them, and that allowed other guys to make plays. So that's when you know you have a great player that you're playing against, is when you have to make special concessions to stop that one guy, and then it allows the other guys on their defense to make plays.
JJ falls in that category now, right?
Yes, he does.
I mean, what he did this past week against Buffalo must have really been impressive for you as a guy who's played this game and has seen injuries bounce back from those type of things.
Yeah, for him to just fight back and rehab to the point to where he could even make himself available to play is one thing, and then to get out there on the field and actually make an impact. That just shows why he's one of the better players in this league, why he's a 3-time Defensive Player of the Year, is because of that type of intensity, that type of effort and motivation. And he showed it in that game, and I think it really pumped his team up. It definitely pumped the fans up, and that energy is something that team needed to come from behind in that football game.
Is it exciting for you to see a matchup like Deshaun Watson versus Patrick Mahomes? How cool is that for you as a quarterback that played the position at such a high level to come from where you came from to see these two match up on such a big stage.
Yeah, and that's the thing, the big stage. You know, they had met earlier this year in the regular season, and that's a good matchup. But now you're in the playoffs. This is where it all counts, and they're in the divisional round, and these are two of the most dynamic quarterbacks in the league right now, and they're going up against each other. And Deshaun won the earlier matchup, so
great game.
So there's going to be a lot of revenge factor from the Kansas City Chiefs. So it's going to be a great matchup, and I think this is what makes the NFL so good, is you can have these type of matchups at this time of the season.
But from you, in your point of view, from where you came from and all the different things that you went through, to see these two quarterbacks go up against each other, what goes through your mind when you look back on what you had to go through to kind of pave the way for some of these guys?
Well, first of all, you want them both to play well.
Yeah.
And you don't know who to root for. You're torn. You're just conflicted, you know, because I love them both.
Do you know Patrick too?
I do know Patrick, yes.
Yeah.
And we have the same agent, Lee Steinberg, when I was playing during my year. So I met Patrick when he came out of school. But I followed him when he was at Texas Tech as well, because I follow the sport in general. Mm-hmm. But I want both of those guys to play well. I want them to perform well on the big stage, and whoever wins. I'm going to be sad for one of them. I'm going to be happy for the other one. But I just hope they both represent themselves well in the football game, and that's all you can do at this point. But just to have them at this stage and be on this stage is something that really makes me proud and makes me stick my chest out a little bit. And
you're having fun in life too, right? You got
I'm
grandkids.
Yeah, I've got 4 great adult kids. I've got 6 great grandkids, and I get a chance to come down here and visit them all the time. And we're having dinner tonight, and if there's not a birthday going on or a graduation or some athletic event they're involved in, I'm usually down here for something like that. So it's a good time in my life.
All you do is spoil the kids, right? And that's what you say.
I fill them up with a lot of junk food and candy,
my dad
and I send them back to their parents.
Yeah. One of your grandkids is a quarterback.
Yeah, he's a young quarterback at West Texas A&M University, and he's redshirted this past year, but looking forward to have big things out of him. He went to Austin High School out in Sugar Land when he was here in Houston, and had a really good career there, and now he's in college, and we'll see what happens.
So what do you think? Who wins the Super Bowl?
Well, we got to get past this weekend first.
Okay.
Everybody wants to know your predictions on the Super Bowl, but there's so much that happens before you get there. I'll answer that question when we get 2 teams in it.
Okay. We'll invite you back then and talk to you then.
I'd love to come back.
Awesome. Warren, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Dan.